So for those who don't know me, I'm Jessie Merrill, Hunter's oldest daughter. Thank you guys all for being here today, and thank you to the Sitting Club for allowing us to pay tribute to Hunter Morrison in a place whose mission and history is so closely aligned with his values, the values of his life: democracy, citizenship, and public service. His life was inextricably linked to the city of Cleveland. In fact, I believe the city was his one true love. He was one of the lucky few who found great meaning and purpose in his life's work. And that is evidenced by so many of you here today who join us from City Hall, the planning office, and YSU. He would be so touched that his life brought together so many of his favorite people in his favorite city on a snowy Cleveland day, nonetheless. When given the both honorable and impossible task of how to best honor my father and his legacy, I had to look to him for guidance. He believed every problem could be solved, but must first be put into context. History explored, stakeholders identified, and countless if-then scenarios played out before coming to a conclusion. At times, this thoroughness was exhausting because more than once I was just looking for yes or no, left or right, but here we are. But like many adult children, I've come to realize how special that annoying little quirk was. He really could talk about anything forever. So today we're going to talk about him and put his life and his legacy into context. And there's no one person who could answer the question, who is Hunter Morrison? So instead, I've elicited several reflections from key players that I think can best sum up all the ways he would like to be remembered. The story of his life will be told by those who shaped his life and those whose life will continue to be shaped by his in the future. We'll start with the one who knew him longest, second longest, his brother Thompson. Followed by the one who knew nearly every iteration of him, his oldest friend, Zach Paris. Then the one who had a front row seat as he pursued his life's passion, his deputy planning director, Bob Brown. Then the one who shared his vision for a city revitalized, and the one who made it possible to see that vision to fruition, his boss and former mayor of Cleveland, the Honorable Mike White. Then we'll have the one who mentored him, whom he mentored and watched blossom into a faithful public servant committed to their shared favorite city, Chris Ronayne, County Executive Chris Ronayne. And then one who worked beside him, below him, and ultimately above him as he went on to focus on regional development, the former president of YSU, David Sweet. And then lastly, the one who saw the softest side of him, my sister, Katie. I thank all of them for the time and the effort that they put into coming together with these reflections. And I thank all of you guys for coming here, sharing stories, and being with us on what is both the hardest and most joyful day of our life.
Good morning. So I am Thompson. I'm the youngest of the four in our family. Hunter, the eldest. There was 10 years between us. So we did not grow up playing together. I grew up studying him. And so my life was to understand who Hunter was and to be guided by him as I began to expand into my own life. So what I wanted to do was to kind of say, well, who was this person from the deeper story of the family? So let me begin. To deeply understand Hunter, it's important to appreciate the three things that he held so dear: history, place, and justice. History was very important to him. As many of you know, he loved to tell stories of how cities came to be. Cities to him were a tapestry of stories. He intuitively understood what the neuroscientist Carl Friston called temporal thickness. Temporal thickness is that we can only imagine into the future insofar as we can remember the past. And so Hunter always felt it was important to remember where we came from and why. So let me tell you a story. Hunter Morrison III was a very proud name for him. He held that name proudly. The name itself, the Hunter and the Morrison, were two families that were really bound together back in Ireland. And he was the third. But his was a Celtic heart. Hunter held a Celtic heart that was wrapped in Anglo-Saxon cloth. But it was driven by a Viking determination. Because Hunter was first and foremost a Morrison, a member of a proud Scottish clan. As I can see right in front of me right here, there we go. But to understand our clan, you must actually journey back 1,000 years. Back to the Isle of Lewis on the Outer Hebrides, the northwest part of Scotland, where we were known by our Gaelic name, Clan MacGillimore. Clan MacGillimore. We were the family of Gillimore. This was a child born of Olaf the Black, a Viking who was destined to become the king of the Isles, and Leon, a noblewoman of Norse Gaelic descent. Now, our MacGillimore clan, we settled in the northernmost reaches of the Isle of Lewis, and it was there we built a fortress. And the fortress was called Duneston. And it was our home, our place, our identity of who we were was based upon place of this fort, Duneston. Now, the MacGillimores, we were to become the legendary brevs of the whole Isles. We were the judges. We were the peacemakers. We were the ones that kept the clans from killing each other because we were commissioned to understand the deep Celtic history and the deep Celtic laws. And our authority was held throughout that entire region. And our family motto itself reflected that commission, which from Latin means those who put wisdom before wealth. So this deep sense of history and place and justice, this was seared into our character long before we were forced off the Isle of Lewis in the 17th century. So this is who we are. This is who Hunter was. Before we were to anglicize, we were anglicized in order to survive, and our name became Morrison as we melded into Protestant society. From Scotland, we went to Ireland, to the County Antrim, where we laid down deep roots. And then in America, where our great-grandfather came to Cincinnati. And then when it was time to raise our family, our grandfather, Hunter Morrison Sr., moved to Cleveland, rooting his family in Huff. It was there that Catherine and my father Hunter and his twin brother Thompson, who I'm named from, that's where they were born and raised on 89th Street. That became their home, their place, their identity. So my brother, however, he was brought up with these stories of Cleveland's golden age, when it was the manufacturing center, not only of the country, but of the world. But as a young man, he now lived in a very different city. Huff was burning. The steel mills were closing. And even the Cuyahoga River was on fire. It was at Yale that he began to draw deeply from his past, to have the audacity to imagine boldly the potential for rejuvenation for himself, his family, and the city. But he did so with a Celtic heart that was stirred by the words of a great professor, Vincent Scully, who asked his students to feel the poetry of architectural space, and to feel beauty. This was the same man, Scully, who was to inspire Jane Jacobs to challenge Robert Moses, urging us to see cities as unfolding organic systems, not simply as machines to be coldly engineered. After graduating, Hunter went into the Peace Corps. He went to Kenya, sensing something important that he needed to learn in a land that is the very birthplace of our shared humanity. He was sent to Monterey Valley, commissioned to build a water system in an immense squatter village. He soon, however, faced significant challenges from the politicians who were unjustly profiting and resisting his efforts from that village. Unwilling to be daunted, Hunter changed course and built playgrounds instead. But there he learned about complexity, tribal complexity. Kenya has over 40 tribes, each with its own homeland, each with its own language, each with its own dances. But in that valley mixed many of those tribes together. And it was there that Hunter learned that in order to create for the common good, one must honor everyone's story, you must honor everyone's dances, so that a new collective story might be woven. Now that community came to call him Bwana. In Kiswahili, that word means those who guide. Those who guide. It's a name of great honor and respect. After graduate school, Hunter not only returned to Cleveland, he returned to Huff, sensing that it was there that he could start writing a new story for Cleveland in his father's homeland, his homeland. And he did by first building those 4 houses in Huff, a neighborhood that had not seen any new residential construction for decades. And then, shortly after, Cleveland became the first American cities to be declared bankrupt since the Great Depression. He became the city planning director. This was a position no one else wanted. Literally, they did a national search and no one applied. 33 years old he was, and they gave him the job so that he might be able to help guide a new way forward for the city he loved. Well, back in the 80s, I remember him spreading out the drawings of the plans on a dining room table with a grand vision to revitalize Cleveland. I thought he was nuts. And my wife and I left. We left and we went to the other side of the world. But he stayed. But every time we came back, he would tell us stories. Stories of how there was a weaving of the diverse communities of Cleveland into a new collective future. A story of organic unfolding, guided by a deep belief in beauty. I remember a few years ago being taken by our dear friends, Gene and Bill, down to an ice cream shop in Ohio City, a part of the city I had lived in back in the early 80s. And even though it has been years since my brother had moved on and lived and worked in Youngstown, you could sense the deep ripples of Hunter's vision. Around us were the bars and the restaurants overflowing with life. I looked around and I said, yes, Hunter, you did it. You did it. With your Celtic heart and your Viking determination, you brought this city back to life by guiding a community to learn to dance together. Bwana Hunter, may your legacy continue to guide our feet. Thank you.
Talk about a tough act to follow. Whoever put this order together, thank you for... I am listed as lifelong friend, and what's interesting about it is that I don't have a Celtic heart. Sorry. You know what that is? That's my pill alarm. So it was an icebreaker, right? Okay. That's what happens 62 years after I met Hunter. Today I have the privilege, but a very difficult task, of talking about my dear friend as he was during our high school and college years. But doing that through the prism of a friendship that has spanned 60 years. I've been trying to remember our interactions before we became lifelong friends, and trying to remember what we were like when we were boys trying to become men. Our families lived only less than 2 miles apart. My family lived in Beechwood, just west of Brainerd, and Hunter's family lived in Pepper Pike at that time, just east of Lander Road. But we were worlds apart. And now that I hear, I'm going off script, now that I hear Thompson mentioning the Celtic heart and the Anglo-Saxon and so forth, you can understand my intimidation being the new Jewish kid at a very, shall we say, upscale prep school on the east side. My father was the son of Jewish immigrants who grew up on East 55th Street in Cleveland above their used furniture store. Now I find out that they lived only 30 blocks from where the Morrisons were on 89th and Huff. I didn't realize how close they lived. But we were really worlds apart. And my dad was the first in his family to go to college. After going to East High School, he went to Case. It was a big deal at that time for him. And Hunter was born into a family that now I know was, I knew they were here for several generations. I didn't realize they could go back 1,000 years. I'm sorry, but our family goes back some centuries, but in places now called Ukraine, Moldova, Russia, certainly worlds apart. And of course, Hunter's dad and many relatives had gone to Yale, and it was a different world, even though in the same place. So I show up for school in 9th grade at University School, and I was one of the new boys out of 70. I felt like a fish out of water, and I was not welcomed with open arms. I was not actively oppressed, but I was certainly not welcomed. It didn't help that I was not a jock. I never was, never will be. Certainly not after reaching this age. And it didn't help that I was Jewish. There were very few of our kind at that school. But during that first year, I made two good friends. One was Harley Williams, who had gone to U.S. from the time he was in kindergarten. They called them lifers at U.S. He wanted to be here, except he had, for 2 days, had his plane to Cleveland canceled, so he couldn't make it. But he was probably the most intellectual student in our class. And then there was Hunter. He had the same interests. He was somehow able to span the worlds a little bit easier than Harley. Maybe that's because he was also a swimmer, so that always helped at US. And these two guys were willing to take me on as a friend. And we developed sort of a mutual learning society. I was exposed to their world, and they were exposed to mine. But the unique element was they both accepted the new kid. and I did not realize that they would be lifelong friends. So these friendships were cemented when we went through 10th and 11th grade with a man named Dick Ricard. Ricard's love and enthusiasm for literature, his rigorous red pen comments on our class papers. I never saw so many comments on papers I thought were pretty good. And his charismatic teaching skills influenced all three of us, even though he sometimes referred to our class as pusillanimous polyps, whatever that means. I still haven't figured that one out. In 10th grade, Hunter suggested that I consider getting involved in the school newspaper, which he had already started work on. And by the end of 11th grade, Hunter became the editor-in-chief of the paper, and he asked me to become the editorial editor. I thereby became one of Hunter's men. During our senior year, Hunter and I bonded over twice monthly rushed car trips downtown to the printer, who was over on West 3rd Street, I believe. Either that or Superior, I can't remember. And we also had to go in and meet before each newspaper with the paper's faculty advisor, happened to be Mr. Ricard, there he goes again, as we tried to get his permission to print stories or cartoons that were edgy and maybe politically controversial in the university school environment. And then there was the annual luncheon of the paper's editorial board, which Hunter held that year at the Hunt Club in Gates Mills, a place which I never knew existed. I mean, I knew about where Gates Mills was. I didn't know. Even though it felt like being in the English countryside in the 19th century, Hunter somehow made me feel welcome there. And then somewhere along the line, I don't know when this started, but I got used to hearing Hunter's baritone greeting, "Hello, Zachary," when I walked into a room. That was a formal greeting only he would give me, and that greeting lasted for 6 decades. Then there was the issue of college applications, always a big deal at what's called a prep school. It's prepping you to go to college, right? The Yale College application package at that time included a small blue index card on which you were asked to list Yale relatives who had graduated from there. I marked the little box at the bottom marked none. And then at one point I asked Hunter, "Did you have to ask for a second card because you ran out of space?" Thankfully, Hunter took my comment humorously. So we both went to Yale along with Harley and 4 other of our classmates from university school. And as Thompson has indicated, it was at Yale that Hunter's world and interest expanded at an increasing pace. Our class at Yale was more diverse than any previous Yale class. Read more Jews, more blacks. And certainly more diverse and much larger than our 70-student class at US. This environment, in this environment, Hunter hit his stride in several ways. One was in the scope of his studies. You heard about Vince Scully's architecture course. He also took courses in political science and city planning. And in his extracurricular work, he was an editor of the Yale Daily News. Now, at that college, it was a Daily News, and it was a lot of work to be on that paper. In fact, I didn't want to do it because it would take too much time away from serious studies. Hunter dived right in and did great at that. And then the third element was his activism related to issues of race and poverty in American society. And that, getting involved in those activities introduced him to some very interesting people who did not have his Celtic background, to say the least. I have two specific memories from the Yale years. First, a few days after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis in April 1968, a memorial service and vigil was held on the old campus at Yale. After the service, I just happened to run into Hunter standing there in the crowd, and we started talking about the serious implications of King's death on American society and the need for each of us to do something about it. Hunter was vehement, thoughtful, and articulate, which was certainly a portent of the postgraduate and career choices that he would make over the next decade. My second memory about Hunter in college is an event that I did not personally witness, but heard about after the fact. It may surprise many of you to know that for 3 days in August of 1969, Hunter and another Yale classmate, John DeVoe, attended the historic Woodstock Rock Festival in upstate New York. Those of you old enough to remember and have seen the movies or whatever about Woodstock, can you imagine Hunter Morrison III in the rain and mud grooving to Santana and Jimi Hendrix? I couldn't believe it. I could believe it of John DeVoe, but not Hunter. The straight-laced and formal Hunter, whom I met in 1962, had come a long way, not only in his taste in music, but in the breadth of his friendships, his worldview, and his ability to just have fun. In many ways, the Yale experience had changed Hunter more than anyone I knew. I think Thompson has given you sort of the brief overview of what happened next, so I will leave that to his remarks. Would be sitting in either New Haven or back here in Cleveland during those years, and he would drop in. Where have you been, Hunter? Oh, I was in Nairobi. Okay, I was in Shaker Heights, you know. But he developed all these ideas that Thompson so eloquently summarized, and I think it had a lot to do with the years in school together. Hunter was a unique person and a dear friend, and I will miss him. Thank you.
Hi, whoops. I'm Bob Brown. Oh, now I can see my script. I've come to realize that we all have many families. There's our first family, the place where we grow up. There's the family we create in our homes in our adult life. And if we're lucky, we also find a way to create a family in the places where we work. In Cleveland City Planning, we were lucky to have created that kind of family. Since Hunter's passing, I've given a lot of thought to why that was. I'll start with what is widely known, which is the great work Hunter did for Cleveland. His passion and excellence motivated the Cleveland City Planning staff to help accomplish great things for our community. My vantage point for viewing Hunter's work was in serving as his assistant director during most of his time as director. I witnessed Hunter by example. I witnessed Hunter leading by example. We saw that Hunter was committed to elevating Cleveland to new heights, working collaboratively and effectively with partners, many of whom are here today, inside and outside of City Hall. We also saw that despite the publicity that was attracted to the high-profile downtown projects, Hunter placed just as much priority on revitalizing neighborhoods across the city as did many of us on his staff. We saw that in Hunter we had a leader who was a consummate professional, brilliant, well-educated, and highly articulate. We saw that his leadership would help make our hard work more worthwhile. Just as importantly, we experienced Hunter as a director who respected his staff and treated us as fellow professionals, and as his partners in moving Cleveland forward. Observing Hunter on the job each day, we knew that we were part of something that mattered and that our efforts would lead to a better future, not only for Cleveland and its residents, but for our region as well. Contrary to the conventional image of government offices being bureaucracies, Hunter created in his Cleveland City Planning Office what I would call a family. We bonded together under Hunter's leadership. Just like any family, we appreciated one another's strengths and took some humor in our quirks. We were quite a cast of characters, as those of you who are here know, who were part of that cast. At the heart of it all was an appreciation that we were part of establishing an important legacy for this city that we all love, led in this direction by a unique and exceptional urban planner in Hunter Morrison. Evidence of this bond is that all these years after Hunter's time as director came to an end, a large group of city planning retirees, all of whom served under Hunter, continue to meet each month for lunch. Goes on today. In fact, I think we're meeting the next week. If Hunter were here with us today, and maybe he is, he's been in this room a lot in his life, I would tell him, Hunter, Cleveland is a better place because of your leadership, and those of us who worked with you are better people. Thank you.
All right. There was a little girl that kept running back and forth. Where is she? Who belongs to her? Who belongs to her? What's her name? Maggie. Maggie. Okay, thank you very much. Maggie gave me a thunderstruck, if that's the word, and I am not going to let that thunderstruck pass. First of all, I want to say to Hunter's brother, who I've never met, you know, I've stood for 16 elections and I've won them all. But I want you to know, if you had ever picked a lane that I was in, I would have just got the hell out and just say, you take it, I'll wait on the next one that comes along. You know? I know what I'm going to be whipped. The other thing that I want to say before my prepared remarks is a moment about why I was thunderstruck by Maggie. You know, there are going to be 5 or 6 or 7 of us that are going to come up to this podium today. We're going to say all kinds of great and true things about Hunter that he truly deserves. But when I saw Maggie running back and forth, and then I saw her run one way the last time, I said to myself, Jane, that's what this really is all about. That is what Hunter's life, Ken Silliman, is what Hunter's life was all about. He wasn't doing all that planning and all that thinking and all that visioning and all that talking and all that meeting so he would one day appear on the front page of the Plain Dealer. So one of the 2 mayors that he served would come to his office one day and say, great job, Hunter. Keep up the good work. He wasn't doing it for the accolades, all the good things that were deserving that we say about Hunter. He wasn't doing it to be famous. He wasn't doing it to be hung on the walls of Yale. He was doing it for Maggie. He was doing it for all the Maggies that had been born in this community for time immemorial. All the Maggies who will one day grow up with loving parents, who will want a better future for Maggie and all the Maggies. And at the core of what Hunter Morrison did, at the core of what his service was to the city of Cleveland, was to make Maggie's life better in the future. Better for her family, better for her children, and yes, better for her grandchildren. And so while Maggie wasn't on my prepared set of remarks this morning, I wanted all of you to know that seeing her and hearing you and seeing all of you really helped me focus on exactly what Hunter's life was all about. To Jane Campbell, the 56th mayor of the city of Cleveland, my immediate successor to Jessica and Catherine, I want to thank you for inviting me to be here this morning. As I thought about my remarks for the day for Hunter, for some odd reason, I couldn't stop thinking about pyramids. Why am I thinking about pyramids? Since I learned of Hunter's passing and since I received the call from Jane asking me to come, for some reason, as I thought about what should I say on Saturday, January 17th, I could not stop thinking about pyramids. You know, a pyramid, and more specifically, all those big blocks that went into making those colossal structures, blocks that hold the structure up, blocks that protected the structure for almost eternity. And as I thought about it, I kept likening this pyramid to the city of Cleveland. I've even started calling it the Cleveland Pyramid. Those are the blocks that hold this city up. Those are the blocks that hold us up. Those are the blocks held by selfless human beings that hold up our city. And there is no one in this room that can say they know a person who was more selfless than Hunter Morrison. Without these individuals, including Hunter, we would be in great peril. For my Cleveland pyramid, every block has a name. Jane, your name is on one of those blocks. Frank Jackson's name is on one of those blocks. Definitely my predecessor, George Voinovich, is on one of those blocks. And definitely Tom L. Johnson has a block too. What we don't realize or appreciate many times is that there are others who make up this support system for our Cleveland pyramid that we don't know. And one of those big blocks should have a new name on it this morning. That name is Hunter Morrison. If there is anyone who has served this great city of ours who should have their block, it is Hunter Morrison, the former director of city planning for 20 years. Hunter was one of two directors I started my major projects with in term 1, day 2. Term 1, day 2. Day 1, I had to get over my hangover. Hunter was there to begin the discussion on building new housing in Cleveland. From there, we worked on many projects on behalf of our citizens, on behalf of the Maggies of the world, 22 different housing subdivisions over 12 years, the creation of a Blue City Identity Markers program for not just city entry, but to build pride. Hunter was there. Planning for the neighborhood around Gateway and the Gateway projects, both stadiums. Hunter Morrison was there, bringing the train companies to heel when they wanted to run trains through our neighborhoods almost 24 hours a day. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1:30, 2:30 in the morning, Diane Downing. Hunter Morrison was there. Planning for the Brown stadiums, yes, Hunter Morrison was there. And just as an aside, if Hunter were here and that stadium was in Cleveland, I can assure you it would look a hell of a lot better than it does today. Hunter would show up during emergencies. These emergencies had nothing to do with planning. He'd lend a hand, he'd provide moral support, or he'd be there to point out an aspect of the current discussion that he had a quibble with, all designed to help improve what we were trying to do. You know, when you work that long and so closely with a person, and life throws you into a situation where you have to abjectly trust that person, you learn a lot about them. So Jessica and Catherine, I want you to know today what I learned about your father. First of all, he was fearless. He never, ever compromised on core principles. I can't tell you how many high and mighty people in this town called me during those 12 years complaining about Hunter. He's too tough. He's too strict. We have to make some money. And on every single occasion, and Chris Warren will attest to this, every single occasion, Hunter was right. And so those individuals, the high and mighty, just had to accept it. At all times, he was the consummate professional, someone you could believe in, someone who you knew was telling you the truth when he said it, and was willing to work with you to make it happen. He was a planning professional, Bob Brown with a capital P. He treated our citizens with great respect. That is not as common as you might think. That is not as common as you may think. You may think that just because you're a public servant, you're going to automatically treat citizens with respect, but he did it every single day, whether he was meeting with Dick Jacobs or a mother of three on 85th and Huff. He treated his staff well, but held them to a higher standard. And I must tell you, Jessica and Catherine, he loved this city more than the Polish love kielbasa. Those are attributes of a person you want to have near you when you're trying to push your city forward. Attributes of a person that you can turn to when the city must be defended, and at times this city must and should be defended. So, I don't know who decides on those Cleveland pyramid blocks, you know, the ones for people who hold up our city, but I sure know this. If there is a block to be built, and if there's another block to be put in, there should be a name on that block. And one of those blocks ought to be named Hunter Morrison, because he sure deserves it. We thank you, Hunter, for all you've done on behalf of our dear city. And may God always watch over you and yours. God bless you all.
Zach Paris, I feel your pain as far as following Mayor White. Thank you, Mayor White. I'm Chris Ronayne. I'm a county executive, but I come today as a mentee of Hunter Morrison. Welcome to the Academy. Those were the words Hunter Morrison welcomed me with when I became Cleveland Planning Director. Welcome to the Academy, said Hunter Morrison. Definitionally, the Academy is a place of study or training in a special field. It's also defined as a society or institution of scholars, artists, scientists that aim to promote and maintain standards in a particular field. Hunter was the dean of both, the place of study and training, and the scholar, artist, and scientist who promoted and maintained the standards of city planning and the city of Cleveland. He was nationally and internationally known as one of a few standard bearers of planning in our times. And we had him here in Cleveland. So many of us owe our debt of gratitude to this standout city planner and this standout human being. And I'm one of them. And so are many of you. If you worked with Hunter directly under him or worked with him over the last 50 years, would you just raise a hand? Jessica, Katie, I'm glad you looked around. It's the impact your dad had. He was a mentor to many and a friend to all in this room and beyond. Well, I first met Hunter as a graduate student at the Levin College, as so many of us did. I met him even before I met my future boss, Jane Campbell. Hunter's passion for the city was contagious, as Mayor White articulated. His eyes darted around and he'd jump out of his chair when you were talking about a good idea for Cleveland and how we can improve it. So I met him in the basement of the old Levin College when Dean Sweet was dean. And Hunter would take our class out into the field. The way to learn was to learn in the neighborhoods. I remember being at the offices of city architecture. Paul, I saw you out there somewhere. You were hosting us that morning. And I saw a car with 2 bumper stickers on it. One was Mike White for mayor. The other was Jane Campbell for commissioner. I knew that was Hunter's car. Well, he believed in his mayors, Mayor Michael R. White and George Voinovich, and he believed in the future Mayor Jane Campbell. He constantly talked about all 3 of them. And he talked about his kids, his brothers, sister, his brother-in-laws, his mother-in-law Joan, who he adored and respected. Jessica and Katie and Jane, thank you for sharing Hunter with us, his other family. Back to Hunter's car at the Levin School. As I went to school in this neighborhood, I approached the car bearing the Campbell and White bumper stickers, knowing it was Hunter's car, and I noticed the front seat was stacked with copies of the citywide plan. Y'all remember that little bound citywide plan? And his downtown plans and hordes of other area plans in his back seat. Some of us heard the horror stories, and you heard earlier from Thompson, of Hunter's plans scattered all around the kitchen table and dining room tables in the house. I have to say, Jane, I picked up that bad habit as my kitchen counter right now hosts a presence of county plans all over the counter that my wife Natalie bristles at. And the old City Hall car that you granted us was weighed down in the back with boxes of neighborhood plans that our planners had planned. So I want to go to City Hall now, to 601 Lakeside, or just 601 as the many alumni in this room call it today. Walk in the door in your mind and take the elevator up to the 5th floor. And there was the hallowed halls where Hunter reigned for 20 years. Through the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s. How many staff members or board members are here today? Just those that worked on the staff or board. There's the Hunter Morrison family. George and Scott, could you just stand up for a second? Scott France, George Kenner. I just want you to see the homage to Hunter and the mustache there. So thank you. Just, Hunter lives on. That was off script, but I had to do that to you guys. Looking good. Well, he reigned there 20 years, and we are his family. We were his family at the City Planning Commission, the Landmarks Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Board of Building Standards. From his office in 501 to the boardroom in 514, Hunter was always on the move. Mayor, you know that. He'd also stop in to the 5th and a half floor, as we call it, to Linda Henrikson's office. Pop up there, always buzzing about. But I didn't get as many of those days as you did. You experienced them, and then you shared those stories with me. I spoke with Linda yesterday, and she reminded me of how Hunter built the academy at City Hall when he nurtured and developed the Design Review Committee and a network of local area design review corporations. Hunter, as the dean of the academy, had a high standard, as the mayor said, to design. He wasn't going to let a developer or an architect deliver something short of the academy standards, nor would his bosses down on the 2nd floor. So it was Hunter who, on floor 5, built the hallowed hall at City Hall. He rebuilt the staff as it had fallen by the wayside in gap years between he and the other renowned planner, our friend Norm Krumholtz. My 2 mentors, both of a very different style, but both giants in their tenure. Cleveland's lucky. The Planning Academy lives here because these gentlemen had the drive for excellence from the 5th floor of City Hall in those days. That legacy lives on. Talking to Marty Cater yesterday about the planning department in the 90s, there were some times of humor, like the time Hunter went to war with a copy machine, and I'm not sure who won. Or the time when he tossed his typewriter because it couldn't keep up with him, and there's stories that he tossed it on the floor, there's stories that he tossed it through the window, and the internal window of city planning, but all in the haste to keep going, Mayor White, and keep working. Well, those were the fun and energetic times and stories, but most of the times were spent delivering plans, big and small, to a board of legends. So many here today, and so many passed on. Just a few I could remember this morning while I was writing this over my Wheaties: Tony Coyne, Gloria Jean Pinckney, David Bowen, Larry Lumpkin, Carol Johnson, Joan Shaver Washington. On the landmark side, Paul Volpe, Robert Madison, Jim Gibbons, Ted Sandy, and Joe Simperman from council. I was lucky. I think, Mayor, many of those were your appointments, and Mayor, many of those were your reappointments, but they were our mentors. But Hunter laid the foundation of that board development. We got together once with the 5 city planning directors that were living. I see Freddie Collier back there somewhere, and Callie Mersman, who's now our planning director. We were a club. We're a club, and one of the great nights was seeing Hunter and Norm, because you knew they had their differences, but talking through the night at that dinner. Bob was there, Fred, you were there. It was cathartic to see those 2 deans talking to one another, finding common ground finally. But the boards that you put together were daunting, mayors. I was 33-year-old like Hunter was, coming in as a planning director. In 2002, I was a bushy, brown-haired, wide-eyed 33-year-old. And Hunter's first advice to me, as my mentor, go out and get some gray hair. So people will take you seriously. I succeeded in that rather quickly, as my staff knows. And Hunter, I blame you for that. He built the Cleveland Planning Academy in an institution designed to outlast himself. And Jessica and Katie, your dad could not have been more gracious when your mom won the mayor's race and Dad, by the laws of nepotism at City Hall, had to find another job. He could not have been more gracious. And I have to say to the both of you how proud all throughout he was and is today of you, a doctor, a pastor, a grandchild. He loves his kids. But we all kind of got taken in by Hunter. And instead of playing out a scenario of his young successor and saying, hey, you're on your own, kid, he did exactly the opposite. He took me in fully. He coached me over the weekends over coffee. And he did it for the love of his city and out of the bigness of his heart. Bob Brown, I also owe you a great debt of gratitude in that transition, along with Tony Coyne and Linda Hendrickson and the whole staff of Cleveland City Planning. Made it easy for us, but Hunter laid the foundation. Grace was all around us. Fred Collier would later experience the same. And Callie, you're standing on the foundation that Hunter built. We carried forward big plans, like the Lakefront Plan, which Hunter had fostered through the delivery of North Coast Harbor with Mayors Voinovich and White, but also the second edition of the citywide plan, which Fred shepherded off of Hunter's original award-winning APA citywide plan, and Bob Brown. We had help all around us. Hunter was with a great team, people like Linda and Chris Warren, Ken Silliman, and all those that served during his tenure at City Hall. And he and Mayor White knew how to use the CDC directors in a way that cultivated and implemented the plans. It's a model, Mayor, I hope we can go back more to, but you and Hunter perfected it. And Mayor Campbell and I tried to succeed with that vision too. As Mayor White knows, and as Jane Campbell knows, Mayor Campbell knows, Hunter was proud, as Thompson said, and as Zach reflected on, of the gains in neighborhoods like Huff, with Lexington Village, he being a former partner to Huff Area Partners in Progress, and the Mill Creek development. Those are as important to Hunter as the big projects were. But yet he is known nationally for Gateway and planning schools, as city planning and Sasaki laid out the plan for the ballpark and the arena, and frankly laid the groundwork for how cities attract sports teams to downtown centers. You know I've been with that refrain ever since. But he laid the groundwork, frankly, for cities like Baltimore and Detroit and Indianapolis and places that pulled back that vision to bring them downtown. In the academy, Hunter respected his predecessors, as do I, as do all of us. Hunter appreciated big plans that stirred the souls, like Burnham's group's plan for Cleveland. He respected it by aligning the BP Tower, the former Ohio building and current Huntington building, on Public Square on a perfect access on the north side of the building, on a perfect access with the mall. Steve Litt, I'm glad you picked up on that in your beautiful tribute to Hunter. To me, it was Hunter to Burnham like Macmillan was to L'Enfant, respectful of how we build off the visions of our predecessors and don't trample on them, whether it's BP's position on the mall or the monuments to the Capitol. These were the moves that earned Hunter's invitation into the academies, be it the big city planning directors at the Lincoln Institute or Harvard's Graduate School of Design. Hunter himself was an Ivy Leaguer by background, but as has been said, it never held him back from hanging out in church basements, rolling up his sleeves, and getting to work. He was as comfortable in a conference room at Fatima Center as he was in any boardroom downtown. And that versatility made him special. It was a hallmark to his entire family, of his entire family. You guys carry that forward, that same mentality. Jane, no matter how good the gigs have been since I worked with you at University Circle or the county, my favorite job will always be planning director because of the respect Hunter gave the job and the foundation he built and paid forward to all of us, and the team he built that I inherited. We, as Bob said, were family. So he paid this profession everything he had, from what started on your kitchen table. And both of you gave me a clear shot to succeed with my team. When we presented you plans, Jane Campbell, for the Towpath Trail, Steelyard Commons, or a plan to save Whiskey Island when you went out to Whiskey Island with me in your car and you said, we can't get rid of this, or to land this convention center in the center district where it belonged, as Hunter's plans had suggested and as our plans carried forward, you boldly signed on. And Jane Campbell, you paid a political price, as we know, but you did the right thing, and we'll always have that on your side. As you all know, post-City Hall, Hunter reinvented himself in his next chapter, and he went on to lead big ideas. Whether it was planning in Youngstown, whether he became nationally known for his seminal work with the shrinking cities, or celebrated the campus and civic plans at YSU that David Sweet can speak to. When I was at UCI, I once sat with Hunter on a weekend retreat in Detroit at the Book Cadillac Hotel, tied up for 2 days with the American Assembly, an Eisenhower administration creation. But I got to sit with Hunter for 48 hours, and we collaborated on the words legacy cities. Those words popped out of the annals of the American Assembly and now are commonly used for transitioning industrial cities with a future like ours. In partnership with NOACA, I saw Howard Mayer here today and Grace Gallucci. Howard handed me his eulogy of Hunter. If mine wasn't going well, I was going to read yours, Howard. But this isn't a eulogy. This is a celebration of a man's well-led life. And may we all aspire what he did in the NOACA Vibrant Neo plan with NOACA to build quality connected communities. He's always looking forward. That plan's a 2040 plan. We still got time. I was touched by Brent Larkin's assessment of Hunter, which recognized that even though Hunter went off to work in Youngstown and ultimately live in Silver Springs, you could not take Cleveland out of Hunter Morrison. In the last few months of his life, I steadfastly experienced that. The last time I saw Hunter, he was in Cleveland for a medical appointment. But he took the time, he never talked about any medical issues, by the way, he wanted to talk planning. He took the time to come out to see me at the Gypsy Bean Coffee House in West 65th. And what did Hunter do? He laid out his plans for a Browns stadium to be located on the Near East Side of downtown. It was a much better plan than they ended up with, I'll just say that. And the last time I heard him, he was like a voice from above in the surround sound at NOACA's boardroom. As the former chairman of NOACA, he was asked to convey his wisdom about governance from the speakers above. I heard him. That's all my memory of him. I heard him above. And it was a metaphor that he's always with us. Jessica and Katie, he's always with you if you keep him alive in stories that you tell about him like you're doing today. He talked about both of you all the time, what you were doing in sports and school and in life. And Jane, I count on a single hand the people who gave me a professional shot in life, and two of those people were Jane Campbell and Hunter Morrison. We made about as orderly a transition as we could, the audacious task of succeeding Michael R. White from 3 terms, but we did the best we could, and we were owed Hunter a lot, the plans he laid that we helped implement. That's who he was, a man who realized what I always say and learned from him, that the institutions we build as a society are bigger than their leader. A lesson we so need reminding of in Washington, D.C. today. But here locally, we have a planning institution that Hunter Morrison built from the academy he respected, nurtured, and taught us all from. He planted the proverbial trees to which he will not sit in the shade of, but others will. That's how a civil society grows. As was said to me from a surviving fireman from the 9/11 fires, from the tragedy at the World Trade Center, it was a fireman who lived but saw his friends die. He said, "You die twice. The day your body clock stops and the last day your name is uttered." For that, Hunter Morrison lives on. His name will long be uttered. May he live long, long in our life and our memories as we honor the academy he mentored from, the institution he built, and the foundation he laid and paid forward for all of us to stand on. To Hunter Morrison.
Thank you, Jessica and Katie, for putting together this celebration of your dad's life. I imagine if we went around this room, we'd all have, or many of you would have, a Hunter story or two. But here's our Hunter story. In the summer of 1978, the Sweet family, Pat, myself, our 4 children, and our dog Donut, moved to Cleveland from Columbus when I was appointed founding dean of the Cleveland State University College of Urban Affairs. Roberta Steinbacher, who's seated here, was the chair of that search committee. When I arrived, I had a number of priorities. One of them was establishing a program in neighborhood development. Hunter was already an adjunct instructor in the department. I learned that he had a bachelor's degree from Yale and a master's from Harvard in planning, and his full-time job was at the Huff Area Development Corporation, focusing on one of the neighborhoods in one of the most impoverished area in Cleveland, as well as around the country. I was impressed before even meeting him. From our initial meeting, Hunter and I developed a professional relationship that lasted 30 years and a friendship spanning 45 years. His connection with the College of Urban Affairs spanned decades, including times as an adjunct lecturer, integrating his real-world experience with the theory explored in the class, and later serving as a senior fellow. In 1980, George Voinovich was selected mayor of Cleveland, and he assembled his team. He wanted to recruit the best and the brightest, and he did just that. Tom Wagner in law, Bill Reedy in finance, and Hunter Morrison as planning director. The mayor charged Hunter with developing a plan for the future of Cleveland. By that time, the College of Urban Affairs had developed the capacity to provide technical support for this planning effort in neighborhood development, housing, demographics, and GIS. Hunter led the effort to develop what we know today as the civic vision of Cleveland, the first comprehensive plan for the city since 1949. Fast forward now to the impact Hunter had on the city of Youngstown and Youngstown State University for the next 22 years. Ironically, he also was with the city of Cleveland for 22 years. So that's the balance. In 2000, Pat and I moved to Youngstown when I was appointed president of Youngstown State University. As I started, I had conversations with Hunter back in Cleveland about his thoughts of developing a partnership with the city. I also had discussion with Youngstown Mayor George McKelvey and his community development director, Jay Williams, about how the university could support the city in developing a plan for the future of the city. Then a fortuitous event occurred in November of 2001. Jane Campbell was elected mayor of the city of Cleveland. And when she took office in 2002, Hunter stepped down as planning director and was out of a job. Not for long, Hunter was recruited to YSU and became the director of the Center for Urban Studies, and Hunter's gifts continued for a new university and a new city. With Hunter in place, we launched our partnership with the city in developing our civic vision for Youngstown. Jay Williams was Mayor McKelvey's lead for the city, and Hunter was the lead for the university. The planning process began with a public meeting of citizens to voice their aspirations and suggestions of complaints, which was held in one of the city's largest auditoriums to an overflow audience, hoping for a better future for their city. Many such meetings occurred throughout the city's neighborhoods as the plan unfolded. Ultimately, the plan emerged and our civic vision became Youngstown 2010. Jay subsequently became mayor in 2005, running as an independent. I asked Jay, now president of the Hartford Foundation, for his view on the impact that Hunter had on Youngstown. And I quote, "I had no formal experience or training in city planning when Dr. Sweet introduced me to Hunter Morrison in the early 2000s. However, after working with Hunter in a variety of capacities for more than a decade, I came to appreciate the unique talent he was. I also came to understand his frequent quotation of the famed architect planner Daniel Burnham, 'Make no little plans.' Hunter understood the profound impact that thoughtful, ambitious, and inclusive city design could have on the quality of life of tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people." Continuing his quote, "We benefited immensely from his doggedly applying that philosophy to the city of Youngstown during my time as community development director and subsequently as mayor. It was the collaborative work of Hunter and Dr. Sweet that helped inspire me to run for mayor. Even now, many years later, when I travel the country, I find myself looking at the design and planning of cities thinking, I wonder what Hunter might say. Today, if you walk around the YSU campus or in adjacent neighborhoods, you'll see Hunter's impact in the development of formal entrances to the campus, new campus housing, the redevelopment of major thoroughfares leading people to downtown and students, faculty, and staff to campus, and new buildings, including the Williamson College of Business, located to connect the campus to downtown. One faculty member who worked on the 2010 planning team said, "The plan was novel. The idea of accepting that we were a smaller city, but become cleaner and greener, and find a better place in the regional economy and connect the downtown with the university." And you know what? It happened. We became cleaner, greener, reduced our built environment footprint, built up downtown, cleaned up Blight, and now are rebuilding neighborhoods one block at a time. This would have not happened without Hunter's effort and leadership. Another faculty member commented, "He always made time for students and became the mentor I lacked having. A man of virtue who never sought accolades, simply led by doing what was right for the community." Another faculty member stated, "One highlight was having Hunter as a student in my College Over 60 course, Geospatial Foundations. And damned if he didn't show up every night, front row, and complete all the work. But that was Hunter, constantly learning and constantly applying that knowledge to impact legacy cities." Finally, Hunter helped us see our future in a different light, from a broken down old city supported by steel to a new vision partnering with the university to move forward. In 2010, I retired from the university, and Pat and I made our way south to be near family. But there was more to Hunter's to come. He served as executive director of the Northeast Ohio Sustainable Communities Consortium. In Youngstown, he chose to live as a resident in a city neighborhood adjacent to the university that spoke volumes of his identifying with the communities he was working to improve as he continued his engagement with the university, the city of Youngstown under Mayor Tito Brown as planning consultant, and recently on the Crab Creek Corridor Improvement Plan, never losing the vision to make things happen for urban communities he revered and chose to serve. A little over a year ago, Hunter moved to Silver Spring, Maryland, with his partner Barbara to continue their new life together and be near Katie and Barbara's family. So that's our story. Hunter enriched Pat's and my life, of which we are very grateful. His impact is universal, and his legacy will live on. May Hunter rest in peace.
Good morning. I am Hunter's youngest daughter, Katie Campbell, or as Mayor White was so formerly calling me, Catherine. My father always said his best project was his children. Cleveland came in a solid second, undoubtedly, but we were always his best project. He wiped our tears and warmed our cars in the brutal Cleveland winter. A prim and proper man steeped in tradition who knew every protocol and was never caught without a collar. I'm willing to bet he was the only person in Woodstock in chinos, loafers, and a button-down. A man who was introduced to jeans by his children in 2002, but didn't start wearing them until his brother Thompson introduced him to this newfangled invention, Levi's, in 2009. He always said that being a father was the best thing he'd ever done. And he looked at us with the same wonder a child gives their favorite puzzle. He was perpetually trying to figure out how our minds worked, how to ensure we had the tools, both physically and metaphorically, to develop into strong women. My dad took pride in seeing how we grew up with grace and dignity in the public eye, filled with joy with the mother Jessie had become, and captivated by the desire to figure out exactly which path I would choose. He never stopped believing that connecting was an imminent possibility. And sometimes he got perplexed along the way and needed someone to pick him up and hold his hand. But he was always willing to try to make things just as beautiful as he had imagined. My sister was his outspoken, fiercely intelligent beauty, a challenge that kept him on his toes, who forced him to open up new parts of his heart. The firstborn who asked him to live into the saying, "Your children teach you more than you could ever have imagined." She hid in the crawl space in a dastardly game of hide and seek as a child, waiting till his voice changed one octave to realize he was actually scared she was gone. Convinced him that subwoofers were an essential part of every home computer, so that our house was serenaded with the shaking tones of Cascada, Tupac, and Celine Dion every morning. Always challenging him to keep growing. And even though he stumbled, he was deeply proud of her journey. Deeply proud of who she was growing into, perpetually filled with hope for his outspoken, fiercely intelligent beauty. I was the wild card who sat in his office, annoyed I couldn't color all over plans for the city. Why have sketches and models of stadiums if not to doodle on them? After unprompted lectures about the Lakefront Development Project, didn't I deserve to draw all over with your fancy colored pencils? It was not my fault the designs were expensive, and you shouldn't have given me a lecture about the Gateway District if you didn't want me to add pink and glitter to the design. Did I strictly need to go to the flats to discuss redevelopment plans in elementary school? Probably not. But I did get a lighter with a naked lady on it in the process. Sorry, Mom. He saw that I shared his boundless creativity and proclivity to think a little too big at times. He saw a gift that needed to be harnessed in order to turn it into something powerful. He thought the best way for me to do that was to help me find my voice. When he dropped me off at Beck Center for the Arts for the first time, he told me I was going there so I could learn to play with my voice. My family had a few powerful women in it, and he was worried I was getting drowned out. It can be hard to find your footing when your family is the news. He told me I had a lot to say, I just had to figure out a way to say it so anyone could listen. And so I played with my voice. From theater to lacrosse, from the pulpit to the pen, I took his wish and learned how to make my voice my own. At times these last few weeks, I felt like my dad and my grandmother were playing some really rude cosmic trick on me, asking me to speak at yet another prestigious pulpit in front of mentors who helped raise me, in a space that meant so much to their leadership. My grandmother at Chautauqua Institution in front of her flock, my father today here at the City Club, asking me to speak about his life in front of those who will continue to carry on his legacy as they breathe life into this city and into their families. In front of leaders who helped raise me as I sat on the floor of the office, coloring or opening some drawer I definitely shouldn't have. My dad never saw anything small. He could dream up solutions so grand and imaginative, you had to sit him down and say, "Now, Hunter, where on earth will we find that kind of funding?" He taught us to see the world as an interlaced tapestry of natural beauty, industry, history, and the diversity of life. To see the world as astoundingly colorful. In 2015, when he pined poetically about Vibrant Neo 2040, he would say, "I know my generation did a lot of damage, but I want to do what little I can to make it better for my grandchildren." And this was years before any of them were ever born. He believed the land had a story to tell. The lake was majestic, the city had a deep history, and no developer, no matter the price tag, got to control how the city looked or how the resources were used. It was up to us to decide the future. He was a man who taught me there are no unintentional choices. If I ever made the fateful error of saying, "Oh, that's a pretty flower," it inevitably ended up in a soporific lecture about the importance of landscaped green space in the Huff redevelopment. It wasn't just a flower, but a conscious choice to invest in natural beauty. Although the man could talk to a wall for hours about Cleveland, he was most passionate about making the world a little bit more beautiful, a little bit more sustainable, and a little bit more interesting for his children and grandchildren. He believed this world wasn't just for us. It was shaped by those who came before us, meant for those who came after us. We were just shepherds helping guide it along the way for however briefly we were on the earth. We were the gift he left on the earth that will carry on the legacy from the Isle of Lewis into wherever the Spirit moved us. We are gathered at the City Club today to celebrate Hunter Morrison III, a man who asked us to remember our responsibility for noticing the little things, responsible for creating beauty in the world. Today we are celebrating a man who reminded us we are in charge of knowing it is never just a flower. It is a wondrous thing to behold. Each flower is a perennial gift that will keep blooming for long after we are gone. He reminded us that we shape the communities of today, thinking of the generations for tomorrow. That we are always on the hook for dreaming big. Let us all go forth and dream. There are big problems today, but he taught each of us that there is never a problem too great to tackle if you just think grand enough. I think I've never done that before. And now, a closing prayer. Beloved Creator, hold us close as we move through this new world without Hunter. May we go forth from this place filled with joy for all that he has given us. Know that even in the moments of profound sorrow, we are grateful for the time he shared with each of us. While he has left his earthly body, his spirit moves within us. His spirit is seen in the cardinal perched on the tree, felt in the warm embrace of a summer breeze. May we find comfort knowing our shared memory of his life will keep his legacy alive. I know there are times our hearts will feel heavy. Moving through the world without someone you love can feel jarring, destabilizing, unfair. But his love endures. The gifts he has given each of us will continue to blossom in our souls. And if ever the burden feels too great, just listen for the cardinal's song. A song so gentle and patient, it can be missed if we're not paying attention. A song that sings out for belonging and lingers deep in our soul. Look out and catch their vibrant red, vividly painted against the winter sky. A beautiful red impossible to ignore, that beckons you to stop and stare. Look out for a sudden blaze against the bare winter branches. See the vivid hue that immediately evokes warmth, comfort, and love. It is a color so magnificent it tells you there is a bright future ahead, a radiant reminder that even when it seems dark and cold, there is a vivacious vibrance that moves us to our feet, that beckons us to take a moment and stop and remember. A splendid spirit that refuses to fade into the background. Let us take comfort in knowing his colorful spirit refuses to fade even in the darkest of times. He will continue to bring us a vibrant reminder of love, hope, and joy. His wings will continue to guide us and show us how to take flight. His love will refuse to fade. In whomever you do or don't believe in, let us say amen. Amen. All right, that concludes our service. We have some light refreshments in the front room, and thank you guys all for being here and sharing in our joy, our love, our sorrow, and just surrounding us all. We really appreciate it.